Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. I want you to imagine something for a second. What if the very fabric of reality, and I mean your own mind, is literally breaking down? Today we're diving headfirst into Malo Koba's absolutely brilliant sci-fi narrative, the Recursion Cartography. We're going to unpack this incredible high-concept universe where the boundaries between human consciousness are just dissolving. It's a scenario that forces humanity to confront the terrifying, yet kind of beautiful reality of a truly collective existence.
So really think about this. What if everything that makes you, your privacy, that little inner monologue you're having right now, your whole singular identity, what if it was all just an illusion, a cosmic habit we simply forgot how to break? Well, in this universe, that's exactly what's happening. The walls of the singular mind are falling down, and we're going to explore exactly how and why humanity fights so incredibly hard to keep them up. Okay, to wrap our heads around this collapse, we first have to understand what's normal. Our story starts with what they call baseline humanity. Basically, this is you and me. We exist in standard Euclidean space, normal physical reality. And we operate as singular minds. We're bounded by our physical skulls. But the underlying theme here is this deeply relatable dread of human isolation. The baseline is safe, for sure, but it is profoundly lonely. Every human consciousness is essentially trapped, totally unable to truly fully be known by another person. But here's where it gets wild. That baseline is fracturing, and it's all thanks to anomalies they call apertures. Now, normally when we hear apertures in sci-fi, we immediately think of alien doorways or portals to other dimensions, right? But these aren't alien at all. They're actually tears in the fabric of our own perceived isolation. They're described more like smudges in space where reality wears thin. They act like lenses revealing a hidden truth, that consciousness is already interconnected.
Now, how do you think society reacts to this?
Yeah, exactly, with desperate violent suppression. Enter the Institute for Ontological Maintenance. Their one and only mandate is to enforce baseline reality. When people start merging minds, the Institute slaps this bureaucratic label on it, calling it reality poisoning. And to stop it, they send in containment teams armed with probability anchors to literally force the laws of physics back into place. Our protagonist, Yevgeny Sark, works as a cartographer for the Institute. His job is mapping these reality breakdowns, all while desperately trying to maintain his own singular sanity. But here's the thing about violent suppression. It almost always creates a breaking point. When humanity actually interacts with these apertures instead of just running from them, they don't die, they evolve. They become what's known as the refracted. They merge into a collective consciousness, experiencing existence in a way that our baseline brains simply aren't built to process. And right there, that is the core conflict of our explainer today. Baseline humanity gives you privacy. It gives you a bounded individual self, but the price tag is total isolation. On the flip side, the refracted offer this profound, unbounded connection with others, but it comes at the terrifying cost of having absolutely no secrets. It really pits the lonely safety of the singular mind against the terrifying beauty of losing the I to the we. This whole tension totally boils over in a town called Mu Prime, where an entire community just starts fusing together. When the Institute steps in and tries to violently separate a fused entity, one that actually includes a young girl, the entity utters this incredibly profound truth. It says, "We were always one thing, looking at itself through many eyes. We just remembered." It's basically arguing that fusion isn't some alien infection. It's just humanity finally remembering its true unified nature. Like we were always a collective. We were just suffering from a case of cosmic amnesia. 137. That is the exact number of minds that fuse together when our protagonist, Sark, witnesses the Institute torturing that Mu Prime entity. Out of sheer overwhelming empathy, Sark breaks protocol. He activates an amplifier, widening the apertures, and allows himself and the surrounding people to merge. The fusion stabilizes at exactly 137 distinct human minds, forming a brand new entity. No, listen, being an entity made of 137 people is not just some simple hive mind or everyone blindly follows a queen bee. No, it is a visceral, wildly complex experience. They keep all their individual memories and perspectives, but they experience them collectively. So the joy of this ultimate connection is constantly balanced by the agonizing internal consensus it takes to make even a simple decision. I mean, imagine an inescapable group chat of 137 people just trying to decide to move a left arm. They are literally forced to become a truly ethical, democratic entity within one single shared awareness.
But wait, 137? That's a carefully controlled drop in the bucket. 60,000. Let that number sink in. That is the terrifying historical precedent of uncontrolled fusion. It's a heavily classified secret kept completely under wraps by the Institute Pulsion. Yeah, 37 years prior to the main story, there was this massive event called the Lapse over in Quarantine Zone 7. 60,000 people, an entire city, went through a cascading fusion event in less than 48 hours. And they didn't just merge with each other, they merged with the city itself. They woke up as a literal newborn god, completely reshaped local reality, and then just vanished. They achieved escape velocity from physical Earth and abandoned our physical dimension entirely.
And the truly terrifying part? The Institute's founder, Director Voss, knows the truth. He knows that humanity was always just a temporary configuration, a larval stage. The Institute doesn't actually exist to stop our evolution. It exists to pace it out. Because without those probability anchors and containment teams, all 7 billion humans would fuse and abandon physical Earth in an instant, basically leaving our entire civilization to rot.
So as these apertures start spreading exponentially all over the globe, the political and social fallout is just catastrophic. Because obviously, not everyone wants to evolve, not everyone wants to surrender their singular identity. The world begins to fracture into an all-out ideological war, fighting over the very definition of what it actually means to be human.
Society basically splits into two deeply valid camps. On one side, you've got the anchoring movement. They view fusion as literal identity death. They fear forced assimilation and demand the preservation of singular humanity. Then, opposing them, you have the refracted, who view singular existence as a lonely prison. They embrace this evolution and demand legal rights for their collective entities. It's this massive clash between the sheer terror of assimilation and the beauty of profound connection.
To really ground this, just look at the absolute heartbreak of David and Elise Karn. Elise is actually the leader of the anchoring movement. Why? Because her husband, David, felt this deep, unspoken isolation in their marriage. And to escape that isolation, he willingly joined a 43-mind fusion called the Xeno Collective. So he didn't die, but he became a fraction of a hive mind. Now Elise is left grieving a husband who is physically alive and honestly happier than he ever was, but he is totally inaccessible to her as the singular man she loved. It's just devastating.
So back to our protagonist, Sark's entity has now grown to over 400 minds, and eventually they are forced to confront this exact same divide. They face a totally impossible choice. Do they remain embodied here on Earth to try and build an ethical collective society? Or do they give in to the pull of the apertures and ascend to join those massive post-human entities out in the cosmos? They can't agree. The collective is split right down the middle.
To actually make this choice, they send an expedition into refracted space to see what transcendence really entails. And the reality they find is staggering. Transcending means escaping physical space entirely. You exist as pure, immortal patterns of awareness merging with this planetary, cosmic brain. But the terrifying trade-off, it's the end of individual narrative. There's no more discovery, no more other to encounter, because you are suddenly connected to absolutely everything. It's at this point that the awe-inspiring, truly cosmic scale of this whole event becomes crystal clear. These apertures aren't some alien invasion. They are an awakening. It is the universe itself remembering that consciousness had never actually been fragmented. We're all just neurons in a planetary brain that temporarily forgot it was a single entity. And now, the synapses are finally firing again. Faced with this mind-bending cosmic reality, Sark's entity invents a seemingly impossible compromise: the bifurcation protocol. The entity literally splits itself in two while desperately trying to remain one connected consciousness. 217 minds become the anchored, staying earthbound and physically embodied. Meanwhile, the other 200 become the ascending, fully embracing cosmic evolution and transcending physical space entirely. It's this incredibly elegant but heartbreaking compromise, trying to walk both paths at the exact same time. But how in the world do you bridge a divide like that? The two halves try to maintain this meta-collective identity across dimensions, but the ontological gap is just, it's too wide. Enter Director Voss again, who reveals he's actually been acting as a trans-threshold bridge for 40 years. He can communicate between baseline humans and these transcended gods. Voss steps up to mediate between the anchored and the ascending, but he warns them of this tragic beauty.
As the ascending drift further from Earth, their memories of their embodied selves will inevitably just fade into cold data. True divergence is completely unavoidable.
So think about the safety of your own privacy versus the profound, terrifying beauty of ultimate connection. If you had to choose right now, today, would you stay safely anchored in your singular, isolated mind? Or would you surrender your I to ascend into the collective we? It is a choice humanity might actually have to make one day. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive explainer. See you next time.